Hello everyone. Today I will be making some eggplant parmesan. We will be needing an eggplant, of course, some eggs, salt, mozzarella. I bought the pearls and I also have the bigger mozzarella balls, some grated Parmesan. You can buy the block and grate it yourself, but I like to make my life easy. And we're gonna be needing some kind of breading. So I have gluten-free Panko crumbs. I will be putting them through the food processor to make them a little bit finer, just because these are a bit clumpy and we need something a little bit more fine for our beautiful eggplant. So let's get started. Let's try this one. So we're going to cut them into rounds. It's up to you how thick you want to make them. I want to go at least a ½ inch, just so that I have substance with it. They're a bit meaty, so that's what we want. We're going to slice our eggplant. You can always peel the eggplant if you do not want to eat the skin, but if your eggplant is pretty tender, you can go ahead and eat it with the skin on. That way you save yourself a step in having to peel it and then slice it. So we're going to go ahead and finish cutting the eggplant here. I'm going to try to use all of it except for the very tip. And then once this is done, we're going to go ahead and place it on a baking sheet with a rack on top, because we're going to let them sit here for a little bit after we sprinkle some salt in them. So we're going to go ahead and lay them out. An eggplant is very sensitive. As soon as you cut it, you start seeing the color change. That's okay. Don't worry about it. We're just going to go ahead and put them on the baking sheet. They don't have to be perfectly straight. We just need to get them on there. And we're going to go ahead and take our salt. And we're going to sprinkle salt on them. What this is going to do, it's going to help extract some of the moisture out of the eggplant, because we are going to lightly fry them. And we don't want that excess water splashing up when we're putting the eggplant in the oil. So I'm going to go ahead and flip these over, and we're going to salt them on the other side. We will leave them in the baking sheet with the salt for an hour before we continue to the next step. Don't worry about the salt. It's not going to make them salty. It's just going to help extract the moisture out of it. Okay, it's been an hour since our eggplant's been sitting on top of the rack. I moved it off the rack because we're going to use the baking sheet as well. We're going to start with our dredging station. We're going to season our flour, just a pinch or two of salt. You don't want to make it too salty. We're not going to season the breadcrumbs. As you can tell, I finally ground my panko. We're going to add some Parmesan cheese to that, and we're going to mix it together. And we will mix that and mix our flour with our salt. We're also going to season our eggs, just a light pinch of salt and some black pepper. We're going to whisk our eggs just to break them up and have them mixed together for our dredging. Once we have mixed our eggs and everything is set up, we're going to take some cooking spray. I have some avocado spray, and we're just going to spray our baking sheet so our Parmesan does not stick. All right, so then what you want to do is you want to take a paper towel and we're going to pat these dry a little bit. See, as you can tell, can you see all the moisture that's coming off of them? So we're just going to pat them dry. We're going to take our eggplant, dip it in the flour, then we're going to dip it in the egg, and finally into the breadcrumbs. You want to use a dry hand and a wet hand for this. You don't. Okay, so you want to keep a dry hand and a wet hand because you don't want to have both of them all sticky with your fingers. So once it's nicely breaded, we're going to put it on our baking sheet. And we're going to continue the process with the rest of our eggplant. So make sure you get egg on the entire thing so that you can actually get a good breading on it. Otherwise, you're going to end up with pieces that don't have any breading. If you don't get the sides, it's okay. The sides aren't that big of a deal. And this is why you want a dry hand. Wipe those off. And I'm going to continue until I'm done with all of them. Okay, down to the last one. I have finished breading all of my eggplant on the baking sheet. Now let me just rinse my hands real quick. We're gonna turn our oven on at 375 degrees and we're gonna preheat it. And before we put our eggplant in the oven, we're gonna spray it. You can either use olive oil and sprinkle some on top, but I'm just gonna use cooking spray. Give them a good coating. I had mentioned earlier that we were gonna lightly fry them. I was incorrect. We're gonna bake them. Less oil, healthier. And then for the mixes, if you are on a lighter no carb diet or a light carb diet or keto or whatever, you can omit the flour. You can omit the flour and and the panko and just use shredded or grated Parmesan cheese. It's a lot more cheese. You won't need to season any of it because the cheese is already salty, but you can always substitute the bread and the flour for plain Parmesan cheese, and then you'll have Parmesan crusted eggplant instead of eggplant Parmesan. Well, I guess it's the same thing, right? Just no flour. Less carbs. All right, excuse the crazy hair today. So our oven has been preheated to 375 degrees. I have bumped it up to 425, and now we're gonna put our eggplant in the oven. And we're gonna let it bake for 18 to 20 minutes. I'm gonna put it, let's put it on the top. I don't want it to completely burn. So remember that all ovens heat at a different temperature. So I always have an internal thermometer in there that you can leave in there permanently, and it'll tell you how many degrees it's at. So make sure that your oven is preheated at 375, and when you're ready to pop them in, you're gonna bump up the temperature to 425. So let's leave that in there. Set your Siri timer to 18 to 20 minutes, and I'll see you back in a bit. All right, while our eggplant's in the oven, we're gonna prep our mozzarella. So this is the larger mozzarella balls. I should specify you can get any kind of melting cheese you like, but I prefer mozzarella, and I prefer the more fresher one. I normally go to this deli down the street from my house. Excuse me while I drain this. And get fresh mozzarella from there, but I didn't make it in time to the deli today, so I just bought this at my local grocery store. And we're gonna go ahead and just take one of our mozzarella balls and we're gonna slice it into rounds. And this is gonna work for when we assemble our eggplant casserole. You can always take out the eggplant a few minutes early, add the sauce, add the cheese. Sorry about that. Like I was saying, you can always take it out early and add the sauce, add the mozzarella, add the cheese on top, and then pop it back in the oven. But I like the casserole just because it keeps it juicier with the sauce and the cheese melted into it. Again, you can do them individually if you want to serve it separately, but I'm going to do the casserole today. So we're done cutting our cheese, no pun intended, and we're going to set it aside until our eggplant is ready and out of the oven. Okay, so I have some store-bought tomato and basil sauce, and I'm gonna just put it in a pot for a little bit. I just wanna semi-heat it. You don't wanna have it boiling. I'm gonna add a little bit of water here, just to get all of the sauce off of the jar. And I'm gonna use a little bit more of another jar that I have here. And the reason why I want to do this is because I want to add more basil to it. I like fresh basil in my sauce. So I have some fresh basil here. And we're going to go ahead and julienne it. So just cutting it into tiny strips. And don't worry, I had already washed it. So we have our little strips of fresh basil. We're going to toss them in. And we're literally just going to mix it. So we're just going to stir to combine. All right, so as you can see, we have combined our basil. Oh, sorry, here we go. Our basil and our sauce, and it's already warm, so that's all we want to do. We're gonna turn it off and we're gonna let it rest until we're ready to assemble our casserole. All right, it's been 20 minutes. We're gonna go ahead and take out our eggplant, and it looks amazing. So what we're gonna do at this point is we're gonna change our temperature down to 325, and we're gonna let it sit while we assemble our casserole. And we're ready to assemble. So I'm gonna take some of the sauce, and you always wanna put a little bit of sauce at the bottom so that the bottom layer doesn't stick. You can also try to bring it up to the sides, or you can grease your baking pan or casserole pan before you start. That way the sides are coated. So, since it's hot, I'm gonna use my tongs. I'm gonna start with the larger pieces, and I'm just gonna lay them out. And we're gonna build up. Obviously, can't go sideways because I have a small tray. Okay, so I have my first layer down. I'm gonna add some sauce on top of each of the eggplant rounds. Okay. And then we're gonna put some mozzarella, just a round on each. And since I really love cheese, we're gonna put little mozzarella pearls on each corner. And we're also gonna sprinkle some Parmesan cheese on top, because otherwise it'd be eggplant mozzarella, not Parmesan. And we're gonna continue. Okay, they're more to the touch. Okay, I cut some wedge pieces out so that I can fill in the gaps, because I want to make sure I use all the eggplant, and why not, right? Took us a while to bake, it took us a while to prepare everything, so I'm just gonna pack it in here. And we're gonna go with our next layer. It looks like we're only gonna do 2 layers because I have a small baking dish. Obviously, it depends on how big your dish is when you're making yours. this is for me, and it'll probably be frozen. The remainders obviously will be in the freezer for next time that I want to eat some. So I'm just gonna add the rest of my sauce on here. Okay, I got my last layer of sauce, again with the mozzarella. You can always bake this without the cheese if you're not a cheese lover, or, you know, if you have a love-hate relationship with cheese, like I do, but, you know, I usually just give up, and I still love cheese even though cheese doesn't love me. And one last sprinkle of Parmesan cheese on top. It's a big sprinkle, right? Okay, now we're gonna pop it back into the oven for 35 minutes at 325 degrees, or 350, depending on your oven. See you in a few minutes. All right. It's been 35 minutes. I'm gonna go ahead and take this out very carefully. It's nice and bubbly. It looks delicious. Turn off the oven. It looks so good. We're gonna let it rest because we don't want all the juices to spill out when we serve it. So I'm gonna let it rest for about 10 minutes and then we'll dig in. Okay, it's been 10 minutes. I'm gonna serve myself a piece of this casserole. The basil makes it smell so good. Look at that cheese pool. Love the cheese. Take this whole corner. It looks delicious. You guys see that? Look at that. So yummy. I'm gonna give it a try. It's delicious, you guys. You need to try this out.